Hi, I'm Jay Lenore Bressler, and welcome to the November 6, 2017 edition of the Bible, Delight in the Details. Today we're going to start a new multi-session program or series on Leviticus. Now, I know when a lot of people start trying to read the Bible through, they get bogged down in Leviticus, and a lot of people think it's boring. But you know, whenever you come across something in the Bible that you think is boring, you need to realize something. There's nothing about God that's boring. Nothing. So if you are perceiving something as boring, it's because we don't understand it. It's because we haven't yet learned or been taught what's significant about it. So with that, I want to bring to light some things in Leviticus that you might have overlooked. And we're going to start with something that we're covering in my Sunday school class at my church right now, and that is the 5 offerings. These were the offerings that God told Moses he wanted offered at the tabernacle, and of course then eventually it would be in the temple too. Now, as we've talked about many times before, everything in the Old Testament is a foreshadowing of something in the New Testament. And usually it has to do with Jesus and his work and his ministry. And it is so true that that is the case with the 5 offerings that we see in the first chapters of Leviticus. We're going to look at this over several days. In Leviticus 1, we see the very first of the offerings, and that is known as the burnt offering. Now, this was to be an unblemished male. It had to be an unblemished male, and it was going to be completely burned. Every bit of it was going to be burned. Now, interestingly, the worshiper brought the animal himself, brought it to the gate or the door of the tent of meeting. That would be the tabernacle. And then it says that he lays his hand on the animal, but actually in the Hebrew, it's a little bit different. It's a little stronger connotation. It's leaning, almost draping oneself over the animal. It's as if to say, this is mine. If you were to grab something away from someone and you'd hold it to yourself and you'd almost fold it in over it and you say, this belongs to me. That's the implication here. And the idea is that you are as firmly and as passionately as possible identifying yourself with that animal. Then it had to be the worshiper himself who actually killed the animal. Then the animal was given to the priest, and the priest would take it and put it on the altar, and then would take some of the blood and splatter it on the top of the altar and on the sides of the altar, and all of it would be burned up. Now, what do all these details mean? Why is this important? The first offering is important because it is indeed the first. Obviously, anything that you see coming first, you need to pay attention to. Usually in the Bible, what is first is priority, and indeed it is here. The burnt offering represents Jesus Christ himself. And we know this. The Old Testament talks about this. In Hebrews, for example, it makes it very clear that these offerings do refer to Christ Jesus himself. Jesus is that offering, and he is completely burnt. He is completely spent. He is completely given up. Think about that. He gave everything. He gave up glory in heaven. He gave up the people understanding who he was. He even gave up some of his foreknowledge as he became a man. He certainly gave up his very life. So he gave everything he had. He was that burnt sacrifice that was completely burned up. Now the question, of course, is, well, who actually killed Christ? Well, there's been a lot of debate in history. Well, was it the Jews? Well, was it the Romans? Well, the answer is it's us. Our sin put Christ on the cross. Our sin, all of us, made it incumbent upon him. If he was going to save us, he had to die in the economy of God. So who put Christ on the cross? Let's stop all this bickering about history, because actually, theologically, it's everybody. And that was represented, that spiritual truth is represented in the worshiper himself being the one that would cut the throat, in this case, of the animal. The animal was understood to be dying in the place of the person, hence why the laying of the hands or the draping over. People understood that this animal was going to be sacrificed in place of themselves. And isn't that exactly what Christ has done for us? He has gone to the cross. He has gone through all of this for us. Now, interestingly, the sacrifice has to be carried into the presence of God. And who does that? Well, the priest. Well, Christ is our high priest. And so when he died and he went to the Father, he walked into the throne room of God and presented himself as the sacrifice, and it was accepted. The Leviticus chapter 1 says that the aroma of this going up to God, the aroma of the offering is pleasing, is a pleasing aroma. And the understanding there is not just, oh, I like it, but it means that it is acceptable. It is deemed worthy. It is deemed appropriate. The only sacrifice that is appropriate for the atonement of sin for mankind is that of Jesus Christ. That's why ours would not be a pleasing aroma. It has to be Jesus Christ. It's also interesting that the worshiper brought this offering to the gate or to the door of the tent of meeting. You cannot come to God, says Jesus, except through him. And indeed, what are they doing? At the very beginning, the very first offering, you bring something that is symbolic of Jesus Christ, bringing it to the door where you are wanting to enter in to fellowship and communion with the Lord. It's a beautiful physical picture of a great spiritual and theological truth. And there's nothing boring about that. Join me tomorrow on the next edition of The Bible, Delight in the Details. Have a great rest of the day.